Hey everyone, welcome to part 2 of our Pre-Algebra Chapter 1 review. We are getting ready for our big upcoming test, and we've already covered the first half of the chapter, so this part of our review is going to focus on order of operations, expressions, and variables. So with that said, we're going to jump right in with PEMDAS, our order of operations. First up, we're going to use PEMDAS to simplify expressions that have multiple operations within them. So our order of operations, we start with parentheses, then exponents, followed by multiplication and division, and lastly addition and subtraction. Now multiplication and division are done left to right, as are addition and subtraction. So we're going to see that in action in just a second. With our first problem, I have parentheses, so I'm going to subtract 10 minus 8 first. That gets me 2. Then I'm going to bring everything else down carefully so I don't accidentally miscopy something and then mess up all of my hard work. Next, I have multiplication and division. So I'm going to go left to right and multiply 5 times 4 to get 20 first. After that, I copy everything else carefully. And then I have division and addition. Division comes next, MD before AS. So 20 divided by 2 is 10. Bring down the 20, and my last step is to add them together. For our next problem, we have parentheses within brackets and an exponent thrown in there. So first I start with my innermost parentheses, 3 minus 2, and that gives me 1. Now I'm keeping the parentheses there because that exponent is still outside, and I haven't done anything with it yet. So I want to keep everything exactly the way it is until I simplify it. So I've brought everything else down carefully. Now I'm going to do the exponent within the brackets. So that's 1 squared, which is 1. If it were any other number, it would give us a different answer, but 10 plus 1 is going to be our next step because that is still within the brackets, and the brackets count as parentheses. They are a grouping symbol. So 10 plus 1 is 11. And now my last two steps are subtraction and addition. So we're going to go left to right, meaning we're going to subtract first. 15 minus 11, that gives me 4. Bring down the plus 6. And my very last step, all that's left to do is add them together, and I get 10. Next up, 6 divided by 4 minus 6 minus 5. So I'm going to remember my PEMDAS, my order of operations, parentheses, exponents, then multiplication and division left to right, and then lastly, addition and subtraction left to right. In our first problem, we have the innermost parentheses, which are 6 minus 5. So I'm going to start there. Remember the middle of that bullseye. So 6 minus 5 is 1. Then I'm going to bring everything else down carefully. Now, the brackets are a grouping symbol, so I'm going to subtract what's within those brackets next. 4 minus 1 is 3. Last step is division. 6 divided by 3 is 2. In my next problem, I have addition, multiplication, and subtraction. We're going to multiply the innermost numbers first. So 3 times 10, and that equals 30. Then I bring everything else down. And now I have addition and subtraction, so I'm going to go left to right. 4 plus 30 is 34. Bring down the minus 7. And 34 minus 7, that's going to give me my very final answer, 27. My last one, I see a fraction, but we want to remember now, fractions are division. So the first thing I'm going to do, because I have the choice of subtraction, division, or addition. So division comes first based on my order of operations. So before I do anything else, I'm going to simplify 4 divided by 2. And then I'm going to bring it all down. So that becomes 6 minus 2 plus 10. Remember, 4 divided by 2 is 2. So that's where that 2 came from. Then I'm going to subtract because it's my first operation going from left to right. So 6 minus 2 is 4 plus 10. Last step, add it together, I get 14. Next, now we have grouping symbols that include fraction bars. So remember, the fraction bar acts as part of the grouping family, so part of that parentheses family. So following my order of operations, let's look at our first problem. Now within each piece of the fraction, I have parentheses. So I'm going to do these two parentheses first. So 15 plus 3, that gives me 18. Then I bring down the multiplication sign so I don't forget it. And then 8 minus 5 is 3. Then I bring down everything below it. 2 cubed plus 1. Next, I am going to simplify each piece of the grouping symbols a little bit further. So remember, each piece of the fraction, basically, top and bottom. So first I'm going to do 18 times 3. Now I need to scratch it on my paper, and that's just fine. Sometimes I don't trust my mental math. So 8 times 3 is 24. 1 times 3 is 3, plus 2 is 5. So the top number is now 54, 18 times 3. And then 2 to the power of 3, 2 cubed. That's 8 plus 1. I bring that down. My next step, I'm going to keep the 54. There's nothing else left to do there, but I do still have something to simplify on the bottom. So I add 8 plus 1 to get 9. Our last step is to remember that this is division. So 54 divided by 9 is 6. Don't forget that our fractions are now division. That's a major key that's going to make your life a little easier than getting intimidated by the fractions. Our next problem has parentheses, brackets, division, multiplication, and exponents. There's a lot going on. So I'm going to start with my parentheses first and add both of those in the same step. So 7 minus 5 will become 2. Notice I'm keeping the parentheses because I still have the exponent to evaluate. And then I bring the other set of brackets down, and within those brackets, I'm going to add the parentheses 2 plus 7, which gets me to 9. After that, I'm going to evaluate the exponent, so 2 cubed, that equals 8. Then I'm going to do the other exponent within the brackets, 9 squared, which is 81. Bring down the division and the closed bracket. And then because I still have the brackets there, because I haven't finished that simplifying that piece yet, I'm going to divide 81 divided by 9 first. And that equals 9. Now my last step is to multiply my final two numbers, 8 times 9, and that equals 72. Next step, I'm going to just remember my steps. If you need to, write this at the top of each of your pages just to use as a little checklist. It can really help just to see the steps in front of you. In our next example, we have another fraction, but remember, these fraction bars are deceiving. They're actually grouping symbols. So we're going to look at the top and the bottom as separate expressions. So in the top, we have two exponents. We're going to evaluate those at the same time because right now they're separated with subtraction, and that would be the last step that we would do anyways. So we're going to consolidate those steps. 5 squared becomes 25. 2 cubed becomes 8. And then I'm going to just bring everything from the bottom of my expression down. And I'm going to do so carefully because I see a lot of operation signs and I don't want to copy any of them incorrectly and mess up all of my hard work. So when I'm copying these down, I notice that I have division, multiplication, multiplication, and division. So I know I'm going to need to go left to right when I'm evaluating the bottom of my expression. Before I do that, I'm just going to copy the top over again so I don't forget anything there. Don't leave out any numbers or symbols. And then on the bottom, when I look left to right, the first operation I see is division. So we're going to do 10 divided by 5. That equals 2. Then bring everything else over. So times 4 times 1 divided by 4. Next, I'm going to simplify even further. This time I am going to copy again the top of my problem just to make sure I don't forget anything. And then on the bottom, I still have multiplication and division. So I'm going to continue going left to right, starting with 2 times 4, which is 8, then times 1 divided by 4. Now, because the top and the bottom of this problem are technically separate, I want you to picture them in separate invisible parentheses, we can do some of our steps at the same time. So I'm going to simplify the top and simplify the bottom. And as long as I'm following PEMDAS with each one individually, I can kind of jump back and forth between them. So I'm going to subtract 25 minus 8 is 17, bring down the plus 1, and then 8 times 1 is 8. Then bring down the divided by 4. From here, I'm going to simplify further. 17 plus 1 is 18. 8 divided by 4 is 2. Now I've fully simplified the top and bottom of my expression. So now that I've gotten rid of everything else, I can finally combine them. And I remember that the fraction bar is division, so 18 divided by 2 is 9. In our next problem, we're again going to look at the top and the bottom as separate expressions until the very end. So in the top, I have an exponent, 4 squared. So I'm going to start by evaluating that. 4 squared is 16. Now in the bottom, I have parentheses and an exponent. So I'm going to go ahead and evaluate those as well. So within the parentheses, I have 20 minus 16. That equals 4. And then I'm going to subtract 3 squared. 3 squared is 9. So that's the next step I'm going to write down. After that, I'm going to just bring down the minus 5 as well. From here, I have multiplication in the bottom still. So I'm going to do that next. 2 plus 16 over 5 times 4 is 20. And then I'm going to bring down minus 9 minus 5. Now, noticing that those are both subtraction, I already want to remind myself that I need to go left to right when I'm simplifying the bottom now. So 2 plus 16, I can evaluate that. That's 18. Then I'm going to go left to right. 20 minus 9. When I subtract those numbers, because with subtraction, order does matter. That's why left to right is so important. 20 minus 9 is 11. Then I'm going to subtract 5. So that equals 18 over 6. My last step, because remember, fractions are division, is to divide 18 divided by 6. And that gives me my final, fully simplified answer of 3. Next, we're going to talk about variable expressions. Now remember, variable expressions are using letters to represent unknown mystery numbers. So in our first examples, they're giving us an expression and then telling us what x, y, and z equal. Then it's up to us to substitute those numbers in the same place that the letters are and figure out what it equals. So x equals 5, y equals 6, z equals 7. I rewrote my problem just to make sure I have my numbers in the right spots, and then I'm going to replace y with 6, z, I'm going to replace it with 7, and x equals 5. So I'm going to keep the parentheses. That way I don't forget that it's 2 times 5 and not 25. That's a very easy mistake to make. So from here, I'm going to remember PEMDAS tells me I need to multiply next. So 2 times 5 is 10. From here, we're going to go left to right. That's why I did 6 plus 7 first. That's 13. Minus 10 is 3. Now in the next problem, we have our expression, and they've told us that x equals 5 and z equals 2. So I'm going to rewrite my expression, and I notice the first part is z over 2. So I want to remember that that's really z divided by 2. So z equals 2, that means I'm going to replace the letter with the number 2. So now my expression is 2 over 2 plus, I'm going to replace x with 5, so plus 5 minus 3. Now remember, fractions are division, so technically PEMDAS tells us to divide first. 2 divided by 2 is 1, plus 5 minus 3. Then we simplify from left to right. 1 plus 5 is 6, and then 6 minus 3 is 3. Again, we have another expression that we need to evaluate given the variables. So x equals 6 and y equals 4 for this expression. And the expression is y times x minus y. So I'm going to put these in parentheses to remember and remind myself that they're multiplication. Because again, I don't want to just write them next to each other and forget that there's an operation happening there. So I'm going to replace the y with the 4, and the x gets replaced with the 6. Now make sure you're putting your numbers in the place of the correct letter. It's easy to mix them up, so always double check. And then the second y I'm going to replace again with the 4. Now I'm going to evaluate left to right, but first I see multiplication. So 4 times 6 is 24 minus 4. When I subtract, I get 20. Next expression is z plus x times z over 5. So x equals 5, z equals 7. I'm going to plug those numbers into the expression where those letters currently are. So xz over 5. Now I'm going to rewrite this. Instead of z, I'm going to write 7 plus, and then using my parentheses to remind myself it's multiplication, x is 5, so 5 times z, which is 7. So 5 times 7. And then 5 was already given to us, so over 5. Now I'm going to simplify by multiplying next. So 5 times 7 is 35 over 5. Oops, there we go. Over 5. And then I'm not going to add next. I'm going to divide first. PEMDAS told me so. So 35 divided by 5 is 7. And lastly, I'm going to add them together. Your last step should always be adding or subtracting unless you're simplifying a division problem and there is no adding or subtraction to do. Now here they're giving us multiple solutions and we have to test them. So like we were just doing, we're going to take our expression 9x minus 15 equals 5x plus 1, and we're going to test each number. So you're going to have 3 problems worked out by the end. It's important that you test all 3, even if you find the right one on the first try. So here I'm going to plug in my first number, which is 2. So 9 times 2 minus 15 equals 5 times 2 plus 1. When I simplify the multiplication, it becomes 18 minus 15 equals 10 plus 1. Next, I'm going to simplify each side of the equal sign. So 18 minus 15 is 3. 10 plus 1 is 11. Those are not equal. That is a false statement, so 2 could not be our solution. Next, I'm going to check the next number, which is 4. And I'm going to test it with the same expression. So this time, instead of replacing x with 2, I'm going to try my new number, which is 4. So this will become 9 times 4 minus 15 equals 5x plus 1. Or 5 times 4, plus 1. Now I'm going to simplify my multiplication because PEMDAS told me to. So 9 times 4 is 36 minus 15 equals 20 plus 1. Now I'm going to subtract on the left, add on the right. 36 minus 15, that's 21. And 20 plus 1 is also 21. So 21 is equal to 21. That's a true statement. So it seems to me like 4 is our correct solution. But because we have to be thorough and show all of our evidence, I'm going to always make sure to test all 3. So I'm going to do the last one, which is 11. And I'm going to rewrite my problem now, replacing the variable x with the number 11. So this becomes 9 times 11 minus 15 equals 5 times 11 plus 1. Now, simplify my multiplication. 9 times 11 will be my next step. 9 times 11 is 99. And then I'm going to bring everything else down carefully. And then multiply 5 times 11, which is 55. Bringing down the rest of that side carefully as well. 99 minus 15 is 84, and 55 plus 1 is 56. 84 is not equal to 56. That is a false statement. So we've proven that 2 and 11 are not the solution, which further proves the work we've done in the middle, which shows that x is the solution. So x equals 4. This is how your problem should look on your test. Next up, we're going to translate each sentence into an expression. So we're looking for key words here and trying to remember the order those words tell us to put the numbers in. So the first one is the quotient of 8 and a number. So quotient means we're dividing, and when it's written in this order, we're going to divide 8 divided by any number you want. I like to choose x. Now, the algebraic way to write this is as a fraction. Next, 12 decreased by a number. That means we're subtracting. So I'm going to write 12 minus x. I'm not going to use the word minus, though. Next, we have the product of 512 and a number. Product is multiplication. So there's a couple ways we could write this. We're not going to use the x anymore, but we could write 512 times x with the little dot. We could also write it as 512 times x without any symbols, because in algebra we know no symbols means we're multiplying. Or our last option is to write it with the parentheses. Any of those will be accepted, but we cannot use the x. The next problem is the difference of a number and 500. Difference is subtraction, and we're going to keep it in that same order. Order matters. When we use the word difference, it stays in the same order. So x minus 500. Next, a number less 5. Now, when it's less, that means we're keeping it in the order it's given to us. If it was less than, that would be a little bit different. So x minus 5. Lastly, we have 50 decreased by 8 times a number. This one has two operations in it. So we're going to start by writing 50, and decreased by is our subtraction sign. And then 8 times a number, well, we know we can write that as 8x. So 50 minus 8x. Now that brings us to the end of our pre-algebra chapter 1 review. I hope you have found this helpful. I hope that you put some extra effort into studying and preparing to make this first test a great one. If you need help, don't forget I'm available in the Math Center, and I can't wait to see you rock this test. Good luck studying.